और मुहम्मद व आली मुहम्मद सलवात। اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد
وعليكم السلام.
Congratulations on the day of Mab'ath of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It marks the beginning of his mission, the beginning of inviting people to the religion of Islam and sharing the ayat of the Holy Quran. Inshallah, after our tafsir, we'll speak a little bit about the Mab'ath and its nature, and perhaps we can have a little bit of a dialogue if we can. As there are some questions regarding Mab'ath, Meraj, why some people refer to it as Meraj, and so on, and also some other questions that relate to the nature of Mab'ath, how it happened, and so on. So inshallah we'll address that after our tafsir session. Continuing on reflecting on the ayat of the Holy Quran in Sura Yusuf, we are on the 6th ayah. We finished the 5th ayah, and we are now on the 6th. As we said, Surah Yusuf appears to have been revealed in Mecca based on most narrations or stronger ones, and it came as a response about to those who inquired about why Bani Israel ended up in Egypt. So the question that came to the Prophet ﷺ, and it appears to have been a challenge because they questioned his prophethood, and therefore, if you're the prophet of the God of Ibrahim and Ishaq and Yaqub, especially the prophets of Bani Israel, and basically the God of both and the Christians at the time, they were at the Kitab. If you're a prophet of that God, obviously the one, are connected, therefore you should know the stories of Bani Israel and what happened to them. And so the question that came to him was, how did they end up in Egypt when their home was in Canaan before that? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to him the ayat of Surah Yusuf, and he responded to them in more detail than they themselves ever had. The first part, we said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reaffirmed and confirmed the revelation, and that we have surely revealed in Arabic or Arabic, so that we may comprehend the reminder that we should reflect on the ayat of the Holy Quran, not just read. Then we came to the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. The story began with the fourth ayah, إِذْ قَالَ يُوسُفُ لِأَبِيهِ. When Yusuf said, yes. Sure. Why is this the best narration? The best of Qasas? Yeah. The best of, so we said Qasas, and so the question, why is this the best story or best Qasas? We said Qasas literally comes from going after the effect that people, the mark that people leave. So yeah, go after their athar. And so that's why it's used for stories. And in this particular, in the third ayah, نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص. أحسن القصص, we said that we could be referring to Quran in general. One of the names of the Quran is أحسن القصص, okay? Or أحسن القصص. Here in the format it came, it's mansub, أحسن القصص. Otherwise, if you're just describing the Quran with its name or one of its titles, then it would be أحسن القصص. So one of the names of the Quran is أحسن القصص. Our Quran is the best narratives, okay, or stories in itself. One of the meanings, or one of the suggestions, is that it could also refer to this particular story. Okay? Although every story in the Quran is the best story, the Quran itself is the best narrative. In this case, also this particular story, the best, not to suggest it's better than other stories that the Quran mentioned, but the best story in general. And also the fact that this, so they say, because the story of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, and in this chapters, Surah Yusuf, it actually started with the story and ended with the story. So it was a full narrative of the story. It wasn't broken into pieces. Quran is not a storybook. Okay, it's not a history book. Okay, therefore, in many cases, in many ayat of the Holy Quran, we have a part of the story that relates to the guidance needed in that part. So wherever the Quran shares the story, it's about guidance. It's a book of guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly. And the order, we know that the order of the ayat of the Holy Quran is what the Prophet wanted. The entire Quran. Inna alayna jam'ahu wa Qur'an. The compilation, putting it together, is upon God, he says in the Quran. And so after Surah Al-Hamd, we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Fatihatul Kitab, we say, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. And then the sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, to the end of the surah. The response, they say, comes in Surah Al-Baqarah. Although in Salat, the reason why we are suggested that we should recite al-Ikhlas frequently, Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad, is because it's a response as well. Okay, you want Surat al-Mustaqim, what do? Qul Huwallahu Ahad. It's a response as well. That's why it is narrated that Imam is used to recite very frequently, to the point that some came to the Prophet and were suggesting that why does he question him, obviously. And the Prophet supported it rather than questioning him or agreeing with them that, okay, you should recite something else. He supported it. He said his level of Tawheed is stronger than everybody else. And that's his relationship with Surah Al-Ikhlas or Tawheed. However, in the Quran, as we start, if we start from the beginning, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, and then the response in Surah Al-Baqarah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alif Lam Mim, ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. You want Huda? It's in the book. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى. So Quran is a book of what? Huda, Hidayah, guidance. The purpose is Hidayah, not a story. So in anywhere Quran narrates a story, it's to guide. Okay? It's not a storybook, it's not a history book, it's not a science book, though it has all of these things for the purpose of guidance. Yes? So here, this particular story, through the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the purpose of guidance, on a certain level of guidance, it came the entire thing in one place. Okay, from the beginning to the end of the story, and the best way it could be narrated. Okay? So, for example, the story has part of the story has aspects that if you were to narrate it as a human being, it would become more of a movie of romance and even some levels of indecency if we were to share it. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shares it beautifully without taking our minds in any wrong direction. Okay? So it's ahsan al-qasas from that perspective. Wallahu a'lam. So yeah, that was ayah 3 and ayah 4. We said started the story with the dream. And it ended with the interpretation of the surah. The story ended in the end with the interpretation of the dream. The last part of the story is the interpretation of this same dream. So he says, I had a dream. إني رأيت أحد عشر كوكبا. His father in the 5th ayah says to him, do not share what you have seen with your brothers. They will plot. They will have a plan or a plot against you. And surely Shaitan is a clear enemy of insan, of human being. Shaitan, the devil, is a clear enemy of insan. So we said that the reason why it said the brothers will plot against him, then said Shaitan has a very bad, he's a very bad enemy, is because Shaitan works and banks on our weaknesses. In awliya'i, the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said Shaitan cannot even affect them, cannot come near them. Okay? So if Shaitan can affect anyone, it is through their own weaknesses, them allowing him. And that's also mentioned in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the words of Shaitan, afterwards, وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ. Afterwards, when everything's over, everything's clear, day of judgment perhaps, Shaitan says, don't blame me, blame yourselves. I did nothing except I called you and you answered me. دعوتكم فاستجبتم. I called you, I had no authority over you. He does not have authority over us. that he could manipulate us without us allowing him. So if we don't allow him, it won't happen. إن الشيطان الإنسان عدو مبين. Ayah number 6. وكذلك, this we have done before, so I'm going quickly. Pardon me if you haven't been with us before, you can refer to the previous video. However, it's all available, yes? Although I was told the previous video, you have to listen a little more attentively, as the audio was not the best. So, وكذلك يجتبيك, and such, كذلك, like that, such, يجتبيك. Yajtabika is from the root jabi, and what it means, Al-Imam Al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, his name is from that one. So it comes from there. What it means linguistically, it's to pick, to collect the best. Okay? Even government agents that collect taxes, okay, they could be referred to as al-jabi. Okay, they are going around collecting taxes. Now, is tax a bad thing? For the one who's giving it, perhaps it's heavy. Okay, but for a country that's providing services without those taxes, they won't be able to provide services, yes? In fact, zakat is a similar concept. Okay? You have something, the best of it you give. The best of it you should give, yes? The extras that God gave you, you give. He gave you extra. You know, when people question certain concepts like homes, they say, oh, this is so much. It's a lot, 20%. And the question is, did you not receive 100% of what you didn't need? And you only have to give what? 20% of it. So that entire 100% you didn't need, and you're only giving 20%. Why is it so much? Because the cost is after your expenses, after you take out your needs, your daily needs, and so on. There are other questions in terms of the legitimacy and the jurisprudence of it, and that we can cover in another session. Nowadays, there are a lot of videos circulating online from certain individuals who know a little and they missed a lot. حفظت شيئا وغابت عنك أشياء. You've learned something, but you're ignorant about so much. So they've learned a few things, read a hadith here and there, heard a lecture here and there, and they post videos questioning things. If you've come across those, please do share and we can discuss that in a separate session. However, back to Yajtabika, we say it came from that collecting the best. Okay? The term is basically, you could say, selected, chosen. Okay? And with it comes, the chosen one by God, the selected one by God, the one who is selected and purified to come to present and offer what's best. Okay, so he then possesses the best characteristics, qualities. Okay, so it has multiple ways of seeing it. Either Yajtabika, as in God chose him, or also God further chose what's best to raise and to nourish in him. Okay, so then you see, and it's a journey, by the way. Yusuf alayhi salam, from the beginning with that dream, he was growing to become stronger and stronger in his relationship with God through the trials. Yes, he is a prophet of God. Yes, he is chosen by God. Yes, he is one of awliya, okay? A leader, an imam of his time. Yet, he had to grow through the trials and tribulations. Part of them were what he went through in terms of the brothers throwing him into the well and being taken by the caravan or sold to the caravan by the brothers, according to the narrations. We'll come to some of those stories. And eventually being basically a slave, okay, he sold as a slave. In any case, back to the story, وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْعَلُكَ such your Lord chooses you, purifies you. I'm curious to know what are some of the translations of that. وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْتَبِيكَ chose, yes. So they typically use chooses. Any other, perhaps that's something to look at further when we get to that term in the translation. Because the Yajtabika chose you is very limited. It doesn't give the real meaning of it. So it needs a bit more explanation. I hope we were able to get that meaning. ربك your So sometimes it's through a teacher that he sends that way. Sometimes it is an enlightenment that comes to us, inspiration, similar to wahi, but it is not the same. Okay, wahi, ahsantum in Arabic is referred to as ilham. Okay, God does ilham to us all the time. Or very frequently we receive those inspirations if we listen. Cheshma did balls coming to jump. Open the eye of your heart and you will see the beloved. You will see what is not visible. What normally, typically is not visible, you will see it with the vision of the heart. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us, inspires us all the time. Awliya attentive. Paying attention to the details. Why did this happen? Sometimes an accident happens, someone far from being, in a good relationship with God and attentive, starts questioning, why did this happen? Why now? One in a hurry to, go to the airport, tries to start the car, and it's not starting. All the times now, that's what comes to the mind, yes? Awliya Allah don't see it like that. They would never question. As soon as they see it, they know there's wisdom. Okay? They may be curious to know why. Okay, what's the wisdom? Not questioning why, as in why I don't want it to happen this way. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in so many ways. One of the common ways and very powerful ways are the trials that we go through. If we are attentive, difficulties and trials are lessons from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that kadalika and such, what is it referring to? Back to the beginning of the ayah. وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْتَبِيكَ رَبُّكَ. And such your Lord chooses, purifies. It's a process. Remember that yajtabika is a process, not just chooses them, it chooses them. Chooses him and chooses the best qualities to nourish within him as a process. That is why the ayah says kadalika and such. This is the way God does it. Kadalika is a process. it's not an immediate thing. Okay, so as a process, it's happening that he is being taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَيُعَلِّمُكَ. يُعَلِّمُكَ here is ma'tufa. It is added to what? يَجْتَبِيكَ. So it's related. God is choosing you and teaching you continuously. And such. So how, through what? كَذَلِكَ referring to what? Because ka is like that, just like that, such. So like what? The dream that becomes a cause of Cain, the plot of his brothers. Okay. So the father, if you recall last week, we said he became aware that a trial is coming his way to him and his children. Why? They should have done better when it came to the person who was asking to be fed. They did not feed him. The riwayah from Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, from Al-Thumali, he narrates it. And therefore, the angel came and told him, you are going to be trialed, you and your children, and prepare for trials. So he's saying, don't tell your brothers, but he's almost positive that this is going to happen. In the sense that, if you recall in the same riwayah, Al-Thumali asked Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, he said to him, when did Yusuf have his dream? Remember what was the answer? The same night they did not feed that man. So there was a man who came asking them to be fed. They had already given the charity and fed the poor. So they neglected him, thinking, oh, maybe he's not being honest or whatever. They had given as much as they could, and they had some left for them. Yet, the next day, if you recall, there were leftovers. Yes, meaning they could have fed him. So the angel came and told him, this is what you're facing. So, فَيَكِيدُ لَكَ كَيْدًا, he knew something's going to happen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is assuring him, or he is telling his son. So this here, وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْتَبِيكَ, could be the father telling his son that this is how your Lord teaches you. وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْتَبِيكَ رَبُّكَ وَيُعَلِّمُكَ, and teaches you مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ, from the ta'weel of ahadith. What is ta'weel? It's a very important question, because often it's a question about Quran, whether or not it has a ta'weel beyond the surface meaning, and if it does, whether or not anyone knows the ta'weel of the Quran. Ta'weel is you could translate it as interpretation, to interpret. But ta'weel, it basically means to know the meaning that is meant by the speaker. To take it back to the speaker. Okay? So in this case, to know what God meant by the ayat. That is ta'weel. In the dream could be some, in fact, there's a hadith that there are 3 types of dreams. One is good news from the angels. The second one is some disturbing things from the devils, shayateen, which is referred to as perhaps nightmares. Yeah? And the third one is a product of our thoughts. In the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that these are the 3 types. So sometimes we have a dream, and that dream could be simply product of our thoughts. Scientifically speaking, they suggest that this is what dreams are. They say they're a product of our thoughts, the subconscious mind. The subconscious or the non the mind or the faculty of the mind that we are not fully aware of. It's there, but we're not aware of. I'll give you an example. When we look with our eyes, okay? Now the eye, every one of you, your eye sees a radius. I don't know what that radius is, but let's say it's 180 degrees. Okay? Roughly, give and take, because the position of the eye, how deep in the head, and so on. Okay, so there's an area that we don't see. But let's say 180 degrees. 180 degrees our eye is seeing. True? When we're sitting, let's say I'm sitting here and focusing on straight ahead, okay? On the line from that part of it. Okay? Am I still seeing anything else? Yeah? So if I'm focusing there, do I see anything here? Okay, I could still see it, yeah? But I'm not focusing on it. So my eye is seeing it. What about my brain? Is my brain processing it, not processing it? The one I'm focused on is the conscious mind. The one I'm not focused on is processed by the subconscious mind. It is processed. Some people, they have very strong abilities, unique abilities. They remember even what is, and they have a good connection and remember the memory of things that are processed in the subconscious mind. So they're still there. Back to the issue of dreams. Now, why I wanted that introduction is because they suggest, scientifically, they suggest that our dreams are a product of our thoughts, either conscious or subconscious mind. However, that is only one type of the dreams, Islamically. And there's clear proof against them, against scientists who don't see beyond the physical world and mind and so on. Don't see beyond, the time and space continuum that we are familiar with. Because sometimes people have dreams of things that they have not seen, visited, or had any exposure of at all, and it's 100% accurate. It's very often that people give descriptions of things that they have never seen. Not in a movie, not in person, but they give accurate descriptions. And those who are familiar would justify, yeah, this is true. What you're saying is true, this is how it looks like, and so on. Sometimes people have dreams and see themselves in events that have not even taken place. And sometimes these things end up happening exactly as they dreamt. So how do they explain that? It cannot. Realistically, it cannot. No scientist, without acknowledgement of what is paranatural, acknowledgement of that perhaps our existence beyond the time and space continuum that we're in, they cannot explain. And so we go back to the hadith. One type of a dream, yes, product of the mind. Oftentimes they say overeating. Overeating, and one has a lot of dreams. Or even fever. Sometimes when someone is feverish, they have certain dreams or even nightmares. Yeah? But some of them are not. Some dreams are actually realities that God is revealing, teaching. In this case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing him some reality that has a meaning from the person who is playing, from God. Quran is from who? From God. This is why the question on ta'weel of the Quran. Does it have a ta'weel? Now, it's not our discussion, but very brief, since we brought it up. Is there a ta'weel? Is there a meaning intended by God for the Quran? Of course. It's not what the listener or the audience understand only. It's actually, it depends on some audience may understand 50%, some 20%, some 5%, some 90%. But there is a ta'weel, there is a meaning meant by the one who's speaking, by God in this case, yes? Is anyone aware of the meaning intended? So some suggest, and unfortunately many go by that, especially in the Wahhabi school, that no, whatever surface meaning, that's what it is. There is no meaning deeper that is intended by God. And that deeper meaning is nobody has access to it. We just take the surface, nobody has that deeper meaning. There's no ta'weel that anyone has. Their argument actually is the Quran by pausing in the wrong place. So in the ayah where they say, وَلَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. Yes? So we stop at وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. They stop is at Allah. Why? Their argument is only God knows the ta'wil. We say no. Ahlul Bayt told us that we are al-rasikhuna fil ilm. Ahlul Bayt are al-rasikhuna fil ilm. And they said that we know the ta'wil of the Quran. Okay? And that makes sense. The Prophet should know the meaning, the intended meaning. If there is an intended meaning, the Prophet should know it. Otherwise, it would be silly. Imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has an intended meaning, He doesn't teach it. So what is that intended meaning? What is the point? So it would be pointless. Something in vain, an exercise in futility. And God would never do something that is senseless. Everything that He does is with a measure, with adab, with a reason, there's wisdom. Therefore, there has to be a ta'weel, and He has to give the ta'weel to the one who is to teach the Quran. The Quran clearly says that the Prophet is given the Quran to clarify for the people. It's the role of the Prophet to clarify for the people. So definitely ta'weel is there, and definitely the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt have access to the ta'weel of the Holy Quran. Ta'weel al-ahadith, here ta'weel al-ahadith refers to, al-ahadith here refers to actually dreams. Okay, in this particular area, not a hadith as a narration, okay, hadith as in the dream. So God will teach you وَيُعَلِّمُكَ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. And He will complete His ni'mah, His blessings upon you. وَيُتِمُّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكَ وَعَلَى آلِ يَعْقُوبَ, and upon the family of Yaqub, also as Bani Israel. Ali Yaqub and Bani Israel, the same, in the sense that, or referring to the same, with a little bit of distinction. It's similar but not the same. Ali Yaqub, the family of Yaqub. Bani Israel, the children of Israel. Yes? Yaqub and Israel are the same. Yes? Yaqub is Israel alayhi salam. Okay. one of the names of Prophet Yaqub is Israel. However, the difference here is it is suggested that and are the people who are not just related to him blood-wise, rather they are with him. Okay, not just related blood-wise, but with him spiritually. The Bani Israel is children, okay? Blood children, and their children, descendants. So all of his children and their descendants, he had 12 children, yes? So he had an Asbat, the 12 tribes from Bani Israel. And they had their children. All of this is Bani Israel. Ali Yaqub is a little bit different. Ali Yaqub, those who are really with Yaqub, following the teachings of Ibrahim, wa Ishaq, wa Yaqub. Prophet Ibrahim, Prophet Ishaq, and Prophet Yaqub. That's Ali Yaqub. So they're more, they're following guidance, obviously. Therefore, here وَيُتِمُّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكَ وَعَلَى آلِ يَعْقُوبَ. And God will complete and perfect His ni'mah, His blessings, upon you and upon Ali Yaqub. With what? With teaching Yusuf to be amongst the prophets of God, amongst the awliya, the special leaders amongst the prophets, not just an average a prophet of God, rather an apostle who was in a position of leadership. And this is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon Ali Yaqub, the ones who are on the right path. Like he completed the blessings upon your parents before. Here specifically, Abawayka, the two fathers. Ab is the father, Abawayka, your two fathers. Here he specifies Abawayka min qabl, meaning before me, because he's the father himself. Yaqub is the father, so he says Abawayka min qabl. This is a clarification in the Quran. Ab is not the immediate father, not just the immediate father, to clarify. Not always just the immediate father, and also not just the biological father. Remember, we had that discussion of Walid versus Ab. Walid is the one who gave birth. I mean, the one who biologically caused the birth. Okay, or Walidin, Wama, Walad, the one who caused the birth of the child. That is the biological father. Whereas Ab could be the biological father, or could be godfather, or the guardian father, like we have nowadays. People may refer to the foster father as the father. Yes. In the stories of Anbiya, who had a godfather? And Ibrahim alayhi salam, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, his godfather or guardian father was Azar. So the Quran clarifies Abika Azar. Okay, the one who, not the father who was the cause of your birth. Otherwise, when he prayed for his parents, he says, Rabbighfirli wali walidayya. My parents here, biological walidayya is the biological parents. Here, for instance, in the ayah, Abawayka, your two fathers before. So the two fathers before Yaqub alayhi salam, he clarifies who are they? Ibrahim wa Ishaq. Then he says, Inna rabbaka alimun hakim. Surely your Lord is all-knowing and all-wise. Hakim. Why does it end with alimun hakim? What do you think? We said the end of ayat with the names of God is always related to the meaning within the ayah. It doesn't come randomly. Okay? If God is speaking about, for instance, repercussions for certain crimes, he wouldn't end the ayah with Ghafur Rahim, because there are some consequences, severe consequences. Okay? And there he may ended with Azizun Hakim, mighty and wise. There's a reason. Here he uses Alim or Hakim. Sometimes Aziz comes with Hakim. Here is Alim and Hakim. The all-knowing, the all-wise. Why? Let's look at the ayah once again. What is he doing? وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْتَبِيكَ رَبُّكَ وَيُعَلِّمُكَ, teaches you. And that process of teaching, the process of continuously teaching, كَذَلِكَ, as such, it's a process, not just one time. Okay? So through the dream, and then the plots of the brothers, and the trials and tribulations, and all of the things that are to happen, this is how your Lord purifies and chooses you and teaches you. That process. That is because He is Alim, He is the all-knowing, and He is the all-wise Hakim. The next ayah, any comments? Do we have time? We have it. No, I think that should be it.
You can do the Mab'ath.
Inshallah. So inshallah, we'll pause here and speak a little bit about the Mab'ath of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Once again, congratulations on this auspicious occasion of Al-Mab'ath and the Sharif, the blessed and honorable day of the appointment or the announcement. Okay, and Ba'ath here is that God is telling him, now go on, start your mission. So the start of the mission of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
A quick couple of points, and please do feel free to ask questions. We like it to be more of a dialogue. We prefer not to, or when I say we, myself, and also the organizers were all in agreement that the best form is dialogue. So please feel free to ask your questions at any point, inshallah, or comments, share your comments. The Mab'ath of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that happened on the 27th of Rajab, one of the sacred or al-Ashhur al-Hurum, sacred months of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was the most significant event in the history of mankind. If only we realize the implications of it. Basically, all of the messages of all the messengers prior to him were preparing humanity, coming together to prepare us for the complete himself, for the complete and perfect message for mankind, for humanity. And he spent, the Prophet ﷺ spent 40 years of his life preparing himself for this moment. So his birth, very important, yes. However, from Ahlul Bayt, we see focus on what? On Mab'ath. Why? His birth, growing up, the process, we spoke about the process of growing, yes, and learning. Yusuf alayhi salam, we were just speaking about Yusuf alayhi salam, how he went through so many trials and tribulations. Look at the trials of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. From the beginning of his life. Shortly after his birth, he loses his father. soon afterwards loses his mother, goes from one custodian to another to another. And then they had the drought at that time, during that time. They had so many incidents. In fact, the year he was born was the year they were attacked by the companions of the elephant, not the elephants, and he. Another time we'll discuss why. It seems to be one elephant, but people think they came with elephants, which makes it almost impossible. How could they bring elephants to Arabia? They need a lot of water, by the way. In any case, so that year was the year that they were going through that trial, and on that year he was born. And went through all the trials in his life, challenges, journeys, travels, from business to issues in the society to even the rebuilding of the Kaaba. There was a flood and destruction, rebuilding of the Kaaba, all during his youth and before his Mab'ath. And then witnessing his people, witnessing how they were all, or not all, but majority, they sort of basically filled the Kaaba with idols, and they were doing rituals for these idols. So these were things that he was witnessing. And therefore he would often leave his people. Besides his business and journeys, he would leave the people and go to the mountain. Not to meditate, as some suggest, rather to pray. There's a difference, inshallah, we understand. Okay? The one is just reflecting, trying to connect, but not sure what connecting with what. Whereas prayers is connecting with God. Okay? So he would go there knowing who God is, knowing the one God. He was the messenger of God from before his birth. Yeah? So he went there communicating with God, praying, connecting. The big difference between the narrative of Ahlul Bayt and the narrative of the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, that unfortunately made it into the books of Hadith and the books of history to the point that made Mab'ath, I would say, one of the worst descriptions of Rasulullah in their books is Mab'ath. And they don't even know which day it was, they don't even celebrate or acknowledge the day. There's no acknowledgement of the day. They have, they suggest that on the 27th of Rajab was Meraj, and so many people call it Meraj, okay? Even within the school of Ahlul Bayt. Ahlul Bayt clarified that it is on the 27th of Rajab was the Mab'ath of Rasulullah. So to start with, the other school does not even share the occasion, okay, or the reality of the occasion. Now, more than that, comes to the narrative of how did Mab'ath happen. We said the Prophet ﷺ was preparing himself for that day, for a speech that is heavy. Quran says, إِنَّا سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. We will bring upon you, bring to you. Ilqa is when you let go of something to put it on something. God is putting this Quran on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says, "Qawlan aqila," heavy, heavy speech that he has to handle. He has to prepare himself for it, and he is the recipient of the Quran completely in Laylatul Qadr. Inna anzalnahu fi Laylatul Qadr. Muslims unanimously agree that ha refers to the Quran, the pronoun ha, anzalnahu, as in anzalna Quran, fi laylatul qadr, the entire Quran. in the school of Ahlul Bayt, we believe it all came upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Was it on the night of Mab'ath? No. It was on the night of Badr. At the night of Mab'ath, he was told, now start reciting. Now it's your start of the mission, and you start sharing the ayat of the Holy Quran. Not that he didn't know them. In the school of Ahlul Bayt, he was fully aware, he had the entire Quran in his heart. Now the question is this supported by hadith or Quran? Quran itself says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says to him, لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل. Don't rush and move your tongue with the Quran. Wait until it is revealed to you. إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا جَمْعَهُ وَقُرْآنَهُ فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ فَاتَّبِعْ قُرْآنَهُ. It is upon us to collect the Quran, to put it together, to compile it. So compiling is also from God, and reciting it. And when we recite it to you, that's when you recite it. So what is Ajala bih? If he didn't have a clue of the Quran, why would God say to him, لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به, with the Quran? Not suggesting that he would say something that's not Quran. No. Don't move your tongue with the Quran and rush with it. Wait until we tell you what to reveal, when to reveal. So he knew it. And so the angel comes in the night of Mab'ath, or as early, closer to Fajr time. And he tells him, start with your mission. And if the ayah that was revealed, Ahlul Bayt did not deny Iqra and did not deny the response, corrected the response. If the ayah that was revealed was Iqra, he says, what do I read? Not, I don't read. The other part of school, they suggest the angel came to him and said, read. And he said, what do I read? I don't know how to read. No, sorry. He said, I'm not a reader. I don't know how to read. And again, and the angel had to squeeze him to the point that he was about to die. SubhanAllah. In the school of Ahlul Bayt, he fully was aware of and waiting for that event. And when he received it, he went on and started his mission, started telling his wife, and she accepted. Told Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he accepted. And they became the first Muslims who used to pray before anybody else, before anyone was even aware or paid any attention. They were reciting the Quran and praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the event as we know it. He was not confused whatsoever. He was not unsure, and therefore was scared, thinking, is it the devil? Is it the angel? None of that would be possible for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rather, he was fully aware, prepared, and ready, waiting for the time for this auspicious and great occasion in the history of mankind, where we are given the honor to be recipients of the Quran, the aman of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is so heavy. He says about it that it is a heavy speech. أولا ثقيلا. We became the Prophet recipient, and indirectly us, his own man, are those who are recipients of the Holy Quran. The Prophet ﷺ left us with the Quran and left us with Ahlul Bayt. Kitab Allah wa Hatrati. This is very important, because back to the concept of ta'weed. Earlier we spoke about the ta'weed. Yes? When we spoke about ta'weed, we said Quran was revealed to the Prophet to clarify, to clarify teach the people what is taught, what is sent to them. Okay? So it is for us, but he is the one to clarify. Okay? In his absence, who clarifies the Quran? In his absence, Ahlul Bayt are the ones who clarify the meanings of the Holy Quran. Especially because Quran, yes, it was revealed in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every incident or every ayah, there's an incident, there's a story behind it, and we learn these things. But that is not to limit the meaning. The Quran is living with us, yes? And it flows with time. Al-Quran yajri in the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt. Therefore, it is applicable in every time, every age, every era. Quran is applicable. How do we apply it? During the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was a little limited in terms of how do we apply the Quran on so many different things that happen in life. So right after the Prophet, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt continue to clarify and apply the ayat of the Holy Quran. They did not have anything from themselves. What they had was from the Prophet and teachings of the Holy Quran. That is why Imam Salih alayhi salam says, whatever he says, whatever we have is from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and whatever I share with you, ask me for its proof from the Quran. Whenever they share anything, they will prove it from the Holy Quran. Now, unfortunately, their enemies read the same Quran, but don't understand. I'll share a story, and inshallah, if you have questions or comments, I'd love to hear from everyone here, or as many people as we can hear from. One day, Imam Salih alayhi salam was having a long was eating, and he was visited by Abu Hanifa, who was paid by the authorities at the time to give verdicts and teach and so on. And so he established his own school, and often the Imam would ask him, what do you base your opinions on? And sometimes he would say Quran, Tafseer of the Quran. So the Imam would ask him, can you give me Tafseer of this ayah, this ayah? None of them he would know. So he said, what do you? So then another time he says to him, well, it's not Quran, it's Qiyas. Okay, so the Imam gives him a proof of the falsehood of Qiyas. Istihsan, same thing. Okay. So in this incident, he was visiting the Imam, and he ate with the Imam. When the Imam was done, he says, Alhamdulillah, thank you, O Lord, this is from your sustenance and the sustenance of your messenger. The Imam knew what he was saying and knew that this person is going to question it because he doesn't understand. Okay, he knows a little, but he is ignorant of so much. Remember, knows something but doesn't know so much. So the Imam says to him, says, Alhamdulillah, this is the sustenance of God and His Messenger. So he said, Ni'mah. He says, this is Ni'mah from God and Ni'mah from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Abu Hanifa, through his ignorance, he says, Ibn Rasulullah, ashrakta billah. O son of the messenger of God, you have made partners for God. Why? Because he says this is the ni'mah from God and from the messenger of God. So the Imam says to him, don't rush. Have you read the Quran? Of course I read the Quran, he says. He said, have you read in Surah Al-Ahzab when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Prophet and says to him, وَإِذْ تَقُولُ لِلَّذِي أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَأَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْسِكْ عَلَيْكَ زَوْجَكَ. And when you used to say to the one whom God blessed him and you blessed him. Quran is speaking to the Prophet. God in the Quran speaking to the Prophet. God says to him, and when you used to say to the one who God gave him ni'mah, and Allah alayhi, And you also gave him ni'mah, وَأَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِ. Have you read that ayah? I said, yes, as if I never read it. Read the Quran, but he said, as if I never read it. This is why we take Quran with Ahlul Bayt, Kitab Allah, wa Hifrati Ahlul Bayt. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this occasion of Mab'ath. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we thank him for the Quran, and we thank him for Ahlul Bayt. We cannot take one, we have to take both and stick to both. Hold on to both of them as firm as we can. ما إن تمسكتم بهما لن تضلوا بعدي أبدا. As long as you hold into both of them, then you will not go astray after me ever. Inshallah, we hold it to both of them, not the Hifra only, and not the Quran only. We hold into the Quran and Hifra. Any questions or comments? Inshallah. If not, if anyone has any, perhaps poetry for the occasion, that Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, sallallahu alaihi wa sallam,
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
محمد وآل محمد.
صل على محمد.
نظر کرم یا نور مجسم، نظر کرم یا نور مجسم، صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم، صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم. رحم کرو یا شاہ دو عالم، رحم کرو یا شاہ دو عالم، صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم، صلی اللہ. او دکھیوں کے گھر کے اجالے، مجبوروں کی سننے والے، ناداں اور لاچاروں کو تم ہی بتاؤ کون سنبھالے، تم ہی بتاؤ کون سنبھالے. جس کا نہیں کوئی اس کے تو ہمدم، صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم، صلی اللہ. نام محمد مشکل کشا ہے، ذکر محمد ذکر خدا ہے. جس در پہ دامن ہے پھیلایا ہم نے، اس در سے دنیا کو سب کچھ ملا ہے، اس در سے دنیا کو سب کچھ ملا ہے. ان سے ہے جاری فیض دو عالم، صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم، صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم. رحم کرو یا شاہ دو عالم، رحم کرو یا شاہ دو عالم، صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم، صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم. افضل الصلاة
والسلام عليك يا رسول الله.
محمد وآل محمد.